Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fiber Broadband Association's Fiber for Breakfast. We're now in our 52nd and final episode of 2023. I hope that everyone has had a wonderful holiday and are ready for an amazing 2024. I can't wait. But before we kick off, I'd like to thank Wesco, the platinum sponsor of Fiber for Breakfast, and our gold sponsor, Network Connect. Today is the deadline for the states to submit their initial proposals to NTIA. So far, Louisiana's initial proposal has been approved, and NTIA has authorized the first 20% of its $1.3 billion of BEAD funding. Virginia and Kansas should be next. Yesterday, NTIA released its approach to the uniform guidance in the BEAD program. In short, NTIA's policy will be directionally aligned with Treasury's approach, which includes the following: providing flexibility for program income, leveraging the efficiencies of fixed amount subgrants, enabling permissionless network upgrades, and establishing a 10-year federal interest period for broadband infrastructure projects. So we'll delve more into the details of the uniform guidance during this Fiber for Breakfast session. As we move into 2024, our first regional Fiber Connect workshop will be held on February 8th in Richmond. We have an amazing lineup of speakers, including Joey Wender from Treasury, who still has $1 billion left to spend on broadband infrastructure from Treasury's Capital Projects Fund. Registration for Richmond is now open, so please register today, as this event will sell out quickly. You can register for Richmond by going to richmond.fbaevents.org. And our upcoming workshops of the year after Richmond will be Little Rock in April, Deer Valley in June, Des Moines in September, Albuquerque in November, and of course our big Fiber Connect 2024 conference in Nashville is July 28th to 31st. And if you thought last year was great, this year is going to be even better. And that brings us to today's Fiber for Breakfast session with Tom Cohen, the Fiber Broadband Association's Chief Regulatory Counsel and General Counsel and partner at Kelley Drye, discuss a year in review, Washington recap. Before I formally introduce today's guests, I'd like to introduce David Norris from our team. He's going to walk us through some housekeeping items.
Great, thank you, Gary. And good morning to everyone who's joined us today. Before I go over a few logistics, we'd like to again thank our platinum sponsor, Fiber for Breakfast, Wesco, and our gold sponsor, Network Connects. Now, if you would all please keep in mind, all participants are in listen-only mode today. To ask a question, please type it into the question box located within the control panel on the side of your screen. We will host a Q&A session with our panelists at the end of today's session. This presentation is being recorded and will be available on FBA's website within 24 to 48 hours. You can find the recording in the Events tab under the Fiber for Breakfast drop-down option. At the conclusion of the presentation, you'll be prompted to complete a brief feedback survey. Please take a moment to do so. We appreciate the input. Now I'll pass things back over to Gary to once again introduce our panelists and get us started. Gary?
Thanks, David. Good morning. I'm Gary Bolton, the President and CEO of the Fiber Broadband Association. Last week on Fiber for Breakfast, our guest was our favorite quantum physicist, Dr. Duncan Earle, the physicist and founder of Cubatech, who discussed the quantum technology securing critical infrastructure and sensitive data. Dr. Earle informed us that quantum computing will break our network and communications security and encryption within 3 to 5 years. An event he referred to as Q-Day, as this event, if we're not prepared, could crash global economies. The quantum world is coming quickly, and only communities with fiber networks will be prepared. Today on Fiber for Breakfast, our guest is Tom Cohen, FBA's Chief Regulatory Counsel and General Counsel and partner at Kelley Drye, to discuss a year in review, Washington recap. Tom is a partner at Kelley Drye in the firm's Washington, D.C. office and has been the Fiber Broadband Association's Chief Regulatory Counsel and General Counsel for over 2 decades. In private practice, he focuses on matters involving communications, including telecommunications, wireless and media, the internet, privacy, and government relations. Tom has more than 30 years of experience in the telecommunications industry sector, first as a government policymaker, serving for over a decade as the Assistant General Counsel for the legislation at the FCC and as a Senior Counsel for the Senate Commerce Committee. He then founded and was a principal in firms assessing and developing communications properties and advising businesses. At Kelley Drye, Tom assists clients with a variety of aspects of communications law, including federal and state administrative and legislative advocacy and business-related legal matters and litigation. So welcome, Tom. And for our audience, type in your questions as we go, because this will be a dialogue, and I'll get those questions in as we get to those topics. So with that, let me turn it over to Tom. And Tom, let's do a kind of a rundown of kind of from the key agencies of what kind of happened this year and what you kind of think is going to be going on next year. So let's kick it off with like NTIA and what's going on with NTIA.
Well, thanks, Gary, and as always, great to be with you and be on an FBA webinar. This was quite a year. We look back, and this was sort of the setup year for NTIA and getting its money out the door. I mean, let's start with everything depended on the FCC getting the national broadband maps right. And they finally headed in that direction just about a year ago. First locations-based map out there, first attempt at trying to get it cleaned up. And the first maps were pretty good, but everybody was wondering, would they get a lot better when they came out in May 2023? Because everybody thought those were the maps that NTIA was going to use to allocate the funds for the BEAT program. And lo and behold, those maps were pretty good. NTIA used them to allocate those funds at the end of June. And that was the key trigger. We finally had good enough maps, about 114, 115 million locations. We had a sense of some, 12 million unserved, underserved locations. And on that basis, NTIA said, here are the allocations for each state. And after they first allocated them, they did a little bit of rejiggering over a month or so, and then finalized them the end of June, such that, as you said at the beginning, today is the key date for states to submit their initial proposals. This is the deadline today. And so that triggered everything.
On the mapping, so it looks like some states came out really good and some not so good on the mapping. Is that mostly the states that did their homework and had their own maps and could challenge those, the fabric?
Gary, it was a combination of things as well. You have on the maps two parts: the denominator, the broadband fabric, and that really much, was CostQuest doing and a work in progress to try to get it right. Here, states came in truly and tried to help get that to be more accurate. Then you had the data that came in, the numerator, from the broadband providers. The issue there was principally those technologies that are more distance sensitive or where coverage is a little more dubious. And here is where I think challengers, states, FCC all came together to hone it. Everybody recognizes there are still issues out there. And certainly there were some states that were a little bit upset about the allocation, saying, you didn't get the locations quite right. The providers' data was a little suspect. But if you look at it as a whole, that really won't move the needle all that much. So generally, NTIA's reliance on, what they had at the end of June is pretty good. And what we're going to get is states now in the challenge process refining that.
So now, we were down in Baton Rouge. Our first regional Fiber Connect was in Louisiana almost 2 years ago. And Vineeth and Thomas and the guys there were dead set on being the first out of the gate, and they have accomplished that. And they're also very adamant that they're going to build out Louisiana with fiber. So should everybody follow Louisiana's lead? Did they do it right?
I got to tell you, Louisiana's initial proposal, which I have been reading and rereading, is very sophisticated. It's got a lot of really interesting concepts in terms of multiple rounds, in effect with references of amounts people should bid, creating almost a reverse auction to drive down prices. And so there's a lot of sophisticated aspects to it that I think will maximize use of the funds and probably get fiber most everywhere. One of the concerns I have, and this is on behalf of, I'll say, maximizing participation with smaller members. The best way to get providers to participate is by allowing them to choose the service areas, or for a state to keep the service areas small, the project areas small, and allow providers to pick out those extremely high cost locations that may skew participation. Louisiana didn't go there. It looks like their sub-project areas are more comparable to census block groups. And so we're going to see at some point, is that going to shake out so that a lot of smaller providers say they just not going to fit how we're going to bid. And the same thing with those extremely high cost locations. So as I say, there's some really good aspects to Louisiana, some very sophisticated aspects. And I guess I'll add that extends to how they deal with the low income issue, the affordability issue. I urge a lot of people to review it. Whether every state can do that, we're going to see.
Well, I'm excited for the guys in Louisiana. I mean, I've had calls with Northeast Louisiana where their entire parishes where they're not participating in the internet. So there's a lot of work to be done there, and I'm so excited they're first out of the gate.
Yeah, I expect they will sort of lead the way. The issue is going to be, Gary, that while there's a deadline for the states to come in, there is no deadline for NTIA to approve the proposals. And there's going to be, just like with Louisiana, with Louisiana, we've got 3-4 months of negotiation on what it should look like. I think we're going to have the same thing going forward in other states as well. But I think there's a fair chance that most will get approved by the end of the first quarter. If that holds, and you can approve volume 1 with a challenge process first, a lot of the applications then will come in at mid-year with awards being made, let's say later third quarter this year.
I'll tell you what, I've been incredibly impressed with NTIA on their whole management of the BEAD program and their willingness to listen and make some adjustments. And I also appreciate them reaching out to us on a regular basis to get our input and to give us heads up. So I couldn't be more pleased. I mean, nothing's perfect, but these guys have done a really good job so far.
Well, and it's also, there's no model. This is first time this has sort of happened. And so they're sort of feeling their way along. But each time, you may quibble or have differences with parts of what they're doing, but overall they're going in the right direction. They're productive. And, you talked at the beginning about the guidance that came out last night on Part 200. Again, a positive step saying we want providers to participate. We want to come up with rules that are manageable, but still hold everybody accountable.
So let's hit some of those rules. So talk a little bit about, providing flexibility for program income, that's pretty important.
Yeah, I mean, again, they allow you to keep program income. Another key part is allowing you to use, in a sense, your existing vendors. You're not going to have to go out with a new procurement, and that will help people facilitate bidding and also facilitate integrating a new project into their current networks, backhauling or something. So that makes a lot of sense. NTIA also is making sense sort of on what's known as the interest period, the federal interest period, holding it at 10 years. So, and other steps as well. So they really try to, again, balance facilitating participation with accountability.
Hey, let's jump to Build America, Buy America. You know, we had Will at our conference on unveiling the first of that, and you know, I was with Vice President Harris over in Wisconsin when they made the first announcement with the vendors. Tell me a little bit about what you think about.
We're waiting, is where we are. The proposed guidance came out in August, and hats off to NTIA. Will Arbuckle and his colleagues are really trying to get it right and dig into this. They sort of have honed what they're doing on fiber and optical fiber cable. They've kind of honed it on electronics, but they still had a lot of work to do on other than access electronics, enclosures, all the other equipment. And it's just taken a bit of time to work through that all to determine what could be made here, what couldn't. And so that guidance should come out any time. I expect it, probably middle of January, something like that, because again, you'll need it if you're going to bid in Louisiana.
So just quick summary of NTIA, is that 2 thumbs up? I mean, in 2 years, got a whole program together, got all 56 states and territories participating. We're going to have everybody's initial proposals in today. They've already started awarding money. I mean, is that 2 thumbs up or?
Yeah, I mean, let's all be realistic about this. Again, brand new program, standing it up for 50 states and 6 territories. It's an enormous task, and they've really accomplished it, in a reasonable way. And remember, Gary, at the same time, they had other grant programs, middle mile, public-private partnership, tribal program. NTIA as well is managing spectrum, came out with that report recently, and also AI, where they took comments and are in the midst of a report there. It's overwhelming what they've had to do. My hats off to the leadership, Mr. Davidson, and all of his colleagues there. A very tough job, and they've done it responsibly.
So let's move on to another successful broadband program. So we're going to have Joey Winder in Richmond, great guy leading the Treasury's capital projects fund. So tell us about what's happening there.
I mean, again, it's good to see adults in charge, and right, and that's what Joey is. He's just a person who wants to find solutions, and with the capital projects fund, that's what he's done. You talked about he's got $1 billion left of his 10 billion. By my count, and I'm sure I'm off a bit, he's given out for deployment projects probably about 7.5 or so billion, reaching some 2 million locations.
And they're all fiber projects. I mean, he's the first out of the gate with 100 by 100 symmetric requirements, prioritizing fiber.
I mean, just great work. And it's an interesting paradigm of how all of that has worked with states proposing things to him and him then working it out and negotiating, not just on deployment, but on certain digital, equity programs, adoption, a first-class job. And I'm interested in about a month to be with you all in Richmond to hear him sort of recap all he's done. It's something, as we look down the road and there's going to be stuff left behind, how do we do it next time? And you certainly have to look to how the capital projects fund has worked.
Yeah, no, I mean, the most approachable guy in DC. I mean, just someone who really listens, and just a great guy and a great program. So another 2 thumbs up for capital projects fund, would you say?
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And, quite enthused, and it's like on these Part 200 rules, Treasury took the lead and showed how to do it. So
Let's move on to Andy Burke and RUS. So Reconnect.
well, Reconnect is picking up the most remote, highest cost locations out there. This year, they began the year finishing up round 3 of the Reconnect program and giving out money there. And then, since mid-year, they've given out, by my count again, about $1 billion in grants and loans for, projects, Reconnect projects. I'm counting whatever, 25 states. Again, they're picking up the highest cost, most difficult to serve, and they're moving forward on that. They're getting new money again from Congress for another round to keep on filling in and bringing, in almost every instance, fiber to these locations.
Again, these guys are building out critical infrastructure. RUS gets it. They've been building out fiber networks for years and years, looking at 100 symmetrics and none of this, low upstream stuff. So they're doing it right.
Yeah, I mean, you build it once and you're done, is where it is. And all of these projects are going to get built, in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, it's coming. It's not like, way down the road. So that's great.
All right, Andy, 2 thumbs up?
Yeah.
All right. So now.
My problem is, Gary, at some point, if I don't give 2 thumbs up, we're in trouble.
Well, we might be entering there. Let's talk about the FCC.
Well, let's talk about a couple of things. One is the FCC just announced sort of the culmination of the RDOF application review process. They, said, no, we're not giving money to Starlink. We're not giving money to a few others. They're ending up, when they started, they were giving out about $9 billion or so over 10 years. It's down to $6 billion. They're going to hit about 3.5 million locations, 97% of which will get gig speed service. So, there's a lot of good here. Yeah, there were definitely issues in the auction, particularly those they allowed in.
I mean, so the $6 billion of good, but it was a $20.3 billion program. So in the process, we just lost $14 billion. I'll call it loss.
Gary, someone could look at it saying, don't focus on the money, focus on the locations. They needed to get to, I think, additional number of locations. One of the problems is if you let in participants into an auction who are not
qualified,
you in effect pollute the auction, the integrity of it, and bids go in the wrong direction at that point. That said, there are lessons here, potentially lessons that states could follow in the BEAD program as they vet participants. You don't want defaults. You don't want even before that, people who come in with bids that are unrealistic. So we'll see if states learn that lesson as they vet applicants for the BEAD program. So RDOF, one aspect. The other one, the big one this year, was enhanced ACAM, where they are giving out, and now this is roughly $1 billion or so a year. These are very difficult to serve locations. They're going to get to about 700,000 unserved locations, and they will continue support for about 2 million locations. And so there's a lot of the traditional smaller incumbent telephone companies that have opted into this program. And so that looks like it's a positive program, going to move forward. So I'm going to give you 1 thumb up on RDOF, but on ACAM, I think we can go with 2.
Okay, I'm just on RDOF. My old buddy Mike is asking, what about the other money from RDOF? So that's gone, right? I mean, we
No,
didn't collect it in
it
USF.
isn't gone. Where we are on universal service sort of support deployment programs is, one, there's a proceeding to see if in the very highest cost areas, the program should support operational expenses. And that it's unclear where the FCC is going to go there, but they're looking at it. My sense is where the FCC is going to be is once all this other money that we've talked about has gone out the door, the FCC then can use universal service to come back and say, so what's left?
Yeah.
Particularly what's left to get fiber at that point. So, Gary, you and I will still be around, whatever, 5, 6, 7 years doing this. So I'm not worried. But that's where probably that money will go at that point.
And just to, Mike had a follow-up question on using the remaining RDOF funds for ACP. Again, that money wasn't collected from USF, so there is no money, but ACP is definitely something we've been working on to get funded, right?
Well, I don't see that happening. The issue, ACP in a sense was sort of a COVID-linked program. Congress appropriated the money. It did not come out of universal service at all. As we've been discussing, it's going to run out of money April of next year. And so Congress needs to step up, and we have been urging it to do so. It's not going to be easy given the budget concerns raised by Republicans, as well as the concerns Republicans have raised about sort of waste, fraud, and abuse. So it's still to come. Now, the larger issue is over the long term, what do you do with Lifeline, which is part of universal service, and can you rejigger it to include something more ACP-like? In theory, maybe, but you really need to deal with the USF contributions issue. And while everyone talks about it, we are nowhere near a solution.
Hey, Tom, we're going to run out of time. So this hit our favorite topic, open internet proceeding, and then kind of close with the big things for next year.
Yeah, I mean, this is what's teed up. The FCC wants to reinstitute Title II regulation of broadband. And yes, Gary, 2 thumbs down. The question is why? I mean, we focus on solutions. What's the problem you're solving? Overall, broadband in America is an incredibly good story. If you look at investment, competition, prices, and also just look at the incentives of broadband providers. Not only, a high fixed cost business, low marginal cost, subject to competition. You don't want to lose customers. You want to give them a great broadband experience, particularly over fiber is the way to do it. You do that. FCC, what are you solving? Why are you, in a sense, creating regulatory friction? And what's noteworthy in this proposal is there's no benefit cost analysis to even look at that. But, in Washington, Gary, the commodity is votes. And they got 3 votes. And so right now, I expect it happening, let's say, towards mid-year. It's unfortunate. I will say something quickly because it's about our friend Joanne Hovis and what she talked about at our premier members meeting about Memphis. If you're really concerned about helping these areas that really need fiber, there are good ways to solve it. And she pointed to Memphis in order to do that. Other than that, there are no failures out in the market. So again, let's solve problems rather than creating them.
Yep. like you said, you got to go when you got the votes, regardless whether it makes any sense or not. All right, so
Unfortunately.
real quick, what's the big things in 2024 that everybody be looking for?
Well, again, BEAD applications. First challenge processes in the first half of the year, followed by applications and awards. I mean, it is a BEAD year. Yes, Joey Wenders will have some cleaning up to do, over at the capital projects, but that's it there. And then you've got, these regulatory issues at the FCC that are going to take our time.
So Steve was asking at what meeting will they adopt the net neutrality order? March, April, May?
I think, my guess is May, June, something like that is when they're going to do it. And then we're all off to court. It's just unfortunate. Gary, you introduced me as someone in a law firm, and I know we deal with litigation, but I always advise against it. And these approaches, what FCC is doing with open internet, what they just did with discrimination, these are litigation-based approaches to policy. That's not how you solve a problem.
Well, also, when you have such a robust capital infusion, we're at the largest investment cycle in history in fiber. Why would you throw a bucket of cold water on it, right?
Right. I mean, the key is entry. You want people to enter this business and build and compete. And those who get harmed most by regulation are not the real big guys. They can withstand it. It's the little guys who are pushing the edges, and that's really bad.
Yeah. Well, Tom, thank you for everything you do for the Fiber Broadband Association and our industry. And really, thank you for sharing your expertise and insights on the activities and proceedings at some of the key agencies in Washington. So I look forward to next week. When we get back together, we're going to be talking with the Wi-Fi Alliance on Wi-Fi 7 plus fiber, delivering next generation of home connectivity. So if you're interested in what's going to be going on in the home and Wi-Fi 7, please join us next Wednesday. So thanks, everyone. I hope you guys have a happy new year.
Same here, Gary. Take care.
All right. 2 thumbs up for Tom Cohen.
Thumbs up. Right.
All right.